Picture a dusty evening in 1878, Dry Fork, where a weathered cowboy, Ethan Cole, stood under a flickering lantern, staring into the eyes of a chained Apache woman who didn't beg or curse, just watched him like she knew his every regret. He bought a broken wagon on a whim, not knowing it held Nashona, a bride bound by a deadly oath, hunted by men who'd burn the desert to keep her silent. One choice could save her or doom them both. Would you free a stranger if it meant losing everything? This tale's ending has left millions breathless. Hit subscribe, share your city or country below, and stay for the moment. A carved sign changes a man's soul forever. What secret could shatter an entire town? The sun bled orange over Dry Fork, 1878, a town choking on its own dust, where the silver mine wheezed its last, and the train depot stood like a tombstone. Folks gathered at the auction square, their faces carved hard by hunger and heat, selling off scraps of a dying West, rusted tools, warped saddles, secrets nobody dared name. Ethan Cole leaned against a splintered post, his boots caked in red dirt, eyes shadowed under a battered hat. At 32, he was a drifter fresh off the frontier army, carrying scars and a past he couldn't outrun. He didn't plan to stay, just needed a job before winter bit. The auctioneer, a wiry man with a whiskey rasp, hollered over the crowd's murmurs, pointing to a tarp-covered wagon, its wood cracked like old bones. "Original condition, no guarantees," he barked. Whispers rippled. That rig had hauled prisoners, maybe worse. Nobody bid. Ethan's hand twitched, not from want, but from a gut-punch instinct, the kind that had steered him wrong before. The price dropped to a handful of coins. His arm shot up, almost against his will. The gavel slammed. "Sold to the stranger?" The crowd's eyes drilled into him, suspicious, as he led the creaking wagon to the Red Coyote Saloon's stable, the air thick with unspoken warnings. Night fell, sharp and cold. Ethan sat in the stable's gloom, a lantern spitting light across hay-strewn dirt. The wagon loomed, its tarp sagging like a shroud. He didn't know why he'd bought it, maybe just to own something in a world that kept taking. His knife traced the tarp's edge, hesitating. Something felt alive inside, not just wood and rust. He yanked the cloth back, and the lantern's glow caught her. A woman, chained at wrists and ankles, sitting against the wagon's wall. Nashona, an Apache, her dark hair tangled, face streaked with faded ceremonial paint, red and white, like a wedding vow gone sour. Her eyes locked on his, not pleading, not hating, but wary, like a coyote sizing up a trap. Ethan's breath caught. He'd seen prisoners before, hauled through forts like cattle, but this was different. Her silence screamed louder than any cry. "Who did this?" he muttered, half to himself. She didn't answer, just watched, her gaze cutting through him, seeing the soldier he'd been, the man who'd followed orders and watched villages burn. He stepped closer, boots crunching straw, and saw the iron cuffs biting her skin, crude and heavy. No key. His hand hovered over his knife, then stopped. In Dry Fork, acting righteous too fast got you a bullet. "You understand me?" he asked, low. A faint nod, but her lips stayed sealed. He set a tin of water and a hunk of cornbread beside her, stepping back to give her space. "I ain't your enemy," he said, though he wasn't sure who he was convincing. Her fingers brushed the bread, cautious, never breaking eye contact. Ethan backed out, the stable door creaking shut, his heart pounding like a war drum. He climbed to the saloon's loft, but sleep wouldn't come. That woman wasn't just a prisoner. She was a fuse, and he'd just lit the match. By dawn, the town buzzed. Ethan overheard it at the Red Coyote's bar, where men nursed cheap whiskey and sharper rumors. "Apache bride, gone missin'," a grizzled miner spat. Meant for some peace deal, but she vanished. Another voice, low. Fort Brennan's watching. Bounty hunters, too. Ethan's gut twisted. He'd bought a wagon, but what he'd really gotten was a target on his back. He drained his coffee, the bitter dregs mirroring his mood, and headed to the stable. Nashona sat where he'd left her, the bread gone, the tin empty. Her eyes flicked to him, less guarded now but still a wall. "They're coming for you," he said, crouching to her level. "Soldiers, hunters, maybe your own." "Why?" She tilted her head, weighing him, then spoke, her English broken but clear. "Water. Paths. I know. Too much." Ethan's blood ran cold. Sacred springs, secret trails, knowledge that could carve railroads through Apache land, spark wars, erase whole tribes. She wasn't just a bride. She was a map to destruction. He stood, glancing at the stable door. Hoofbeats echoed outside, voices rising. Caleb Holt, a bounty hunter with a scar like a lightning bolt, was already in town, asking questions. Ethan looked back at Nashona. One choice could bury him. Or her. "Stay quiet," he whispered, gripping his revolver. The stable walls seemed to close in, and Dry Fork's silence turned deadly. Hoofbeats faded into the dawn, but Ethan Cole felt the noose tightening around Dry Fork's stable. Nashona's words, water, paths, too much, hung like gun smoke, a warning that her secrets could burn the desert to ash. He shut the stable door, the creak swallowed by the town's waking hum, and stepped into the glare of a new day, knowing he'd just stepped off a cliff. Morning in Dry Fork was a slow poison. The sun scorched the cracked earth, and the Red Coyote saloon buzzed with men trading lies over stale beer. Ethan slipped inside, his shoulder brushing the doorframe, eyes scanning for trouble. The bar smelled of sweat and spilled whiskey, the air thick with whispers about the missing Apache bride. He caught fragments. Fort Brennan's sniffing. Caleb Holt's got a price. Her tribe's out for blood. His fingers grazed the revolver at his hip, a reflex from years dodging bullets and bad calls. Nashona stayed in the stable, hidden under a pile of sacks, her chains muffled, but still biting. Ethan had wanted to cut them, but her sharp glance stopped him. "Not yet," she'd hissed, her broken English like a blade. "Free me. They find me faster." Her trust was thin, and he didn't blame her. He'd seen what happened to those who trusted too soon, graves marked by nothing but wind. At the bar, Ethan ordered coffee, black and bitter, and leaned in to listen. A one-eyed prospector muttered about a deal gone sour. Nashona was meant to wed a rival chief, sealing peace between tribes, but someone, soldiers maybe, wanted war instead. Her disappearance broke the pact, and now every gun in the territory was aimed at her. Ethan's jaw tightened. She wasn't just running from chains, she was running from a trap that could slaughter her people. He needed answers. Slipping out, he headed to the town's edge, where Old Man Ruiz, a half-Mexican trader who spoke Apache, mended harnesses in a shack. Ruiz's eyes narrowed as Ethan approached, his hands pausing over cracked leather. "You're the fool who bought that wagon," he said, voice low like a rattlesnake's hiss. Ethan didn't deny it. "She's in trouble, Ruiz. I need to know why her own want her dead." Ruiz spat into the dirt. "She knows things, springs only her shaman's guard, trails no white man's mapped. Railroad wants 'em. Army, too. Her tribe thinks she's selling secrets." Ethan's gut churned. Nashona wasn't a traitor. She was a pawn in a game rigged to bleed her dry. Ruiz leaned closer. "Caleb Holt's at the livery, asking about you." Ethan nodded, tossing Ruiz a coin, and turned back toward the stable, his boots kicking up dust like a warning. Nashona was waiting, crouched in the shadows, her eyes glinting like obsidian. "You spoke to someone," she said. "Not a question." Ethan crouched beside her, the air heavy with hay and fear. "They say you're a traitor. Is that true?" Her lips pressed thin, then parted. "I swore to protect my people. Water is life. I know where it hides. If I speak, they die." Her voice cracked, not from weakness but fury. Ethan saw it then, the weight of a vow that could bury her. He pulled his knife, the blade catching the lantern's flicker. "We can't stay. Holt's close, and soldiers ain't far." Nashona's hand shot out, stopping him before he touched her chains. "Not here, not now. Take me to Blackthorn." Ethan froze. Blackthorn was a ghost ranch, a rotting outpost from his army days, where he'd watched orders turn to ash. "Why there?" he asked. She met his gaze, unflinching. "Safe, for now. I know paths." The stable door rattled. Voices outside. Holt's, sharp and cold, with another man's growl. Ethan doused the lantern, plunging them into darkness. Nashona's breath was steady, her hand brushing his as she pointed to a loose board at the stable's rear. "Go," she whispered. They slipped through, the night swallowing them, and ran for the town's edge, where scrub brush and shadows offered cover. Behind, Holt's men cursed, their lanterns bobbing like hounds on a scent. They moved fast, Ethan's heart pounding, Nashona's steps silent as a ghost's. Blackthorn was a half-day's ride, but on foot, it'd be a gauntlet. "You trust me?" he asked, glancing at her. She didn't answer, just kept moving, her chains clinking faintly. That was enough. Dry Fork's lights faded, but the hunt was on, and Ethan knew the desert didn't forgive fools who ran blind. The desert night stretched endlessly, a black veil pierced by Nashona's faint chain clinks as she and Ethan Cole vanished into the scrub. Dry Fork's lanterns were specks now, but Caleb Holt's hounds weren't far behind, their curses cutting the dark like knives. Ethan's pulse hammered, each step toward Blackthorn Ranch a gamble against a past he'd buried in blood and ash. Dawn clawed over the horizon, painting the mesa red as they reached Blackthorn's skeletal remains. The ranch squatted in a hollow, its barn sagging, fences splintered like broken teeth. Ethan's boots crunched on gravel, memories of his army days flooding back. Nights guarding this outpost, orders to stand down while smoke rose from distant villages. He shook it off, leading Nashona to the barn's shadow, its warped boards groaning under a hot wind. "Is this your safe place?" he asked, voice rough. She nodded, eyes scanning the ridgeline. "For now, paths here. Hidden." Inside, the air was thick with mold and ghosts. Ethan barred the door, his shoulder throbbing from the run. Nashona sank against a stall, her chains glinting in slivers of light. "You know this place," she said, catching his flinch. "Bad memories?" Ethan grunted, checking his revolver's cylinder. "Bad choices." He didn't elaborate, but her gaze held him, seeing the weight he carried. Orders followed, lives lost. A village turned to embers because he'd trusted the wrong men. She shifted, her voice low. "My people. We hid here once, before soldiers came." Her words were a blade, slicing open Ethan's guilt. He wanted to ask more, but a distant hoofbeat froze them both. Ethan peered through a cracked board. Dust rose on the trail. 3 riders, Holt's men, their rifles catching the sun. "They're close," he whispered. Nashona's jaw tightened. "We move. Now." She led him to a trapdoor under rotting hay, revealing a tunnel carved into the earth. Apache handiwork, narrow and cool. "You first," Ethan said, gun ready. She crawled in, chains scraping stone, and he followed, the dark swallowing them. The tunnel spat them out near a dry creek bed, its banks shielding them from view. Nashona pointed north. "Blackthorn's old well. Water there. Then we climb." Ethan nodded, but his gut screamed trouble. Holt wasn't the kind to lose a trail. They reached the well, its stones crumbling like Dry Fork's dreams. Nashona pulled up a bucket, the water brackish, but drinkable. Ethan gulped it down, then froze as a rifle's click echoed. Caleb Holt stepped from the brush, his scar twisting in a sneer, 2 men flanking him. "End of the line, Cole," he drawled, leveling his gun. "Hand over the squaw." Ethan's hand hovered over his revolver, but Nashona's sharp whisper stopped him. "Wait." She stood, chains dangling, eyes locked on Holt. "You want water? Paths? Kill me. You get nothing." Holt laughed, cold as a winter grave. "Talk, or he dies first." Ethan's fingers twitched, but Nashona's glare held him still. She stepped forward, voice steady. "There's a map, hidden. I'll show you." Ethan's heart sank. She was buying time, but at what cost? Holt motioned her closer, but a twig snapped behind. Ethan spun, firing at a shadow. One of Holt's men dropped, clutching his chest. Chaos erupted. Bullets tore through the air, splintering the well's rim. Ethan tackled Nashona behind a boulder, his shoulder screaming as a slug grazed it. Holt's remaining man charged, but Nashona tripped him with her chains, her movement swift despite the iron. Ethan finished him with a shot, the echo swallowed by the creek bed. Holt vanished into the scrub, his curse lingering. Ethan grabbed Nashona's arm. "We gotta move." Blood seeped through his sleeve, but he ignored it, pulling her toward the ridgeline. She didn't resist, her breath ragged but eyes fierce. As they climbed, Ethan glanced back, the desert sprawling like a judge's gavel. "That map," he panted. "It real." Nashona's silence was answer enough. He swore under his breath, but something else stirred. Respect. She was playing a deadly game, and he was all in. "Folks, if this fight's got your blood pumping, hit that subscribe button," he imagined saying, as if the desert cared. "Share where you're watching from. It's you keeping stories like ours alive." The thought felt right, like a nod to those who'd hear this tale by firelight, rooting for 2 souls against the odds. The ridge loomed, a jagged promise of cover, but hoofbeats thundered below. Holt wasn't done, and Blackthorn's ghosts weren't through with Ethan. Nashona gripped his hand, her chains a cold reminder. Freedom was a lie until they outran the past. Nashona's cold chains brushed Ethan Cole's hand as they scrambled up the ridge, the desert's jaws snapping at their heels. Blackthorn's ghosts clung to him, but the hoofbeats below, Holt's, relentless, were real, driving them toward Red Hollow, a canyon sacred to the Apache, where stone spires stood like sentinels, and every shadow hid a noose. Noon scorched Red Hollow, the sun a hammer on Ethan's blood-soaked shoulder. He and Nashona crouched behind a jagged outcrop, the canyon's red walls towering, their crevices whispering old Apache prayers. Her breath was steady, eyes scanning the maze of rock and dust. "This place," she murmured. "My people call it the heart. No blood should spill here." Ethan wiped sweat from his brow, his revolver heavy in his hand. "Blood's all they want now." She shook her head, chains clinking. "Not all." Her gaze drifted to a distant mesa, where vultures circled. Ethan followed her eyes, catching movement. Apache warriors, their silhouettes sharp against the sky, led by Kyle, a chief with a face carved from stone. Below, Caleb Holt's men fanned out, rifles glinting, while Fort Brennan's soldiers crept in from the east, their blue coats stark against the rust-colored earth. The canyon was a trap, closing tight. Ethan's gut twisted. "We're boxed in." Nashona's jaw tightened, her fingers tracing a faded paint mark on her arm, a wedding vow she'd never wanted. "I end this," she said, voice like flint. Before he could stop her, she stood, chains dangling, and stepped into the open, a lone figure against the canyon's maw. Ethan lunged to pull her back, but her glare froze him. "Trust me," she hissed, and walked toward the heart of the hollow. Cale's warriors descended first, their spears and rifles raised, voices chanting a low, angry hymn. Holt's men held their ground, fingers twitching on triggers, while the soldiers fanned out, Captain Ellis barking orders. Nashona stopped in the center, where a flat stone gleamed like an altar. "I am Nashona," she called, her broken English echoing off the walls. "I renounce the bond. I break the vow." Her hands rose, chains glinting, and she tore the painted cloth from her shoulder, letting it fall like ash. The Apache froze, their chant dying. Kyle stepped forward, his eyes blazing. "You curse us all," he growled. "The pact was peace. You bring war." Nashona stood taller. "The pact was a lie. Soldiers paid for blood. I ran to save us." Murmurs rippled through the warriors. Doubt, not just anger. Ethan's heart pounded, his hand on his gun. But he stayed hidden, watching her face the storm alone. Holt's laugh cut through. "She's playing you, Chief. Hand her over, or we take her." Ellis shouted, "She's Army property. Stand down!" Chaos flared, rifles cocked, spears leveled, voices clashing like thunder. Nashona raised her voice, sharp as a blade. "I am no one's. Kill me, and my secrets die too." Ethan's breath caught. She was baiting them, forcing a stalemate. But the cost was her life. A warrior lunged, grabbing her chains. Ethan broke cover, firing a warning shot that kicked up dust. "Back off!" he roared, stepping beside her. Cale's eyes narrowed, recognizing him. "White man, you choose death." Ethan met his stare. "I choose her." Holt's men charged, and bullets tore through the air, splintering rock. Soldiers fired, and Apache spears flew. Ethan shielded Nashona, his wounded shoulder screaming, but a bullet grazed his leg, dropping him to one knee. Nashona knelt beside him, her chains scraping as she dragged him behind the altar stone. "Fool," she muttered, but her eyes held something new. Gratitude, maybe trust. The canyon roared with gunfire, blood staining the sacred ground. Ellis shouted an offer. "Cole, give her up. Walk free." Ethan spat into the dirt, his voice raw. "Go to hell." He fired back, dropping a soldier, but the odds were crushing. 3 factions, 1 target. Kyle's voice boomed. "Enough!" He raised a hand, and his warriors paused, though Holt's men didn't. Nashona whispered, "They'll kill me before they let me speak." Ethan gripped her arm, blood soaking his sleeve. "Then we fight." But as he reloaded, a spear grazed his side, and darkness edged his vision. Nashona was yanked away, her chains clanking as Cale's men bound her for judgment. Ethan crawled forward, vision blurring, the canyon's red walls closing like a grave. He'd failed. Again. The ghosts of Blackthorn laughed, and Red Hollow's heart bled, its altar defiled by a vow broken and a man broken with it. Red Hollow's red walls faded into Ethan Cole's fevered haze, Nashona's chains echoing as Apache warriors dragged her away. His blood soaked the canyon's altar stone, each breath a knife in his side. The ghosts of Blackthorn and a burned village screamed he'd failed again, but a howl tore through the dusk. A sandstorm, rising like the desert's wrath, swallowing the canyon in a choking veil. The storm's roar drowned gunfire as Ethan clawed to his knees, dust stinging his wounds. Nashona's silhouette flickered through the haze, her captor stumbling as wind lashed them. Ethan staggered forward, vision swimming, and saw her twist free, chains snapping taut as she tripped the warrior. "Run!" she shouted, voice cutting the gale. He grabbed her wrist, the iron cuffs biting his palm, and they plunged into a narrow khor, the storm's fury shielding them from spears and bullets. The K was a jagged scar in the canyon, its walls slick with ancient watermarks. Nashona led, her steps sure despite the chains, navigating by memory or instinct. This path, she panted, sacred, hidden. Ethan's legs buckled, blood trailing behind, but her grip steadied him. The storm's howl faded as they emerged into a cave, its mouth veiled by tumbling sand. Inside, the air was cool, heavy with the scent of stone and time. Ethan collapsed against a wall, his revolver slipping from trembling fingers. Nashona knelt, tearing a strip from her tattered dress to bind his wounds. "You should have left me," she said, her broken English sharp. Ethan's laugh was a rasp. "Tried that once. Didn't stick." Her eyes, dark as the cave's depths, held his. Gratitude, defiance, something deeper. She pulled a small leather pouch from her belt, revealing a hand-drawn map, its lines tracing springs only her people knew. "This," she whispered. "Why do they hunt me?" Before he could speak, she held it to a stray ember, the parchment curling to ash. "No more blood for water." Ethan's heart sank, then steadied. She'd burned her leverage, her life, to keep her people secret. "You're crazier than me," he muttered. She almost smiled, a ghost of warmth in the gloom. Outside, the storm raged, buying them hours, maybe less. Nashona's chains clinked as she sat beside him, her voice low. "I was to marry a killer, to save my tribe, but I heard soldiers laugh. War was their plan. I ran. Now, I'm no one's." He nodded, the cave's silence heavy. His past orders followed, villages lost, mirrored hers. "We're both ghosts now," he said. She touched his hand, chains cold, her skin warm. The moment broke as a shadow loomed at the cave's mouth. Caleb Holt, his scar livid through the dust, revolver gleaming. "Found you," he snarled, stepping in, boots grinding sand. "Map or no map, you're mine." Ethan lunged for his gun, but pain pinned him. Nashona moved faster, snatching Ethan's knife from his belt. Holt fired, the bullet grazing her arm, but she dove low, chains swinging, and drove the blade into his thigh. He roared, stumbling, and Ethan, with a last surge, tackled him, wrenching the revolver free. Holt's fist caught Ethan's jaw, but Nashona's chains lashed out, wrapping Holt's wrist. Ethan fired, the shot deafening in the cave, and Holt crumpled, blood pooling black. They stood, gasping, the storm's wail their only witness. Nashona's arm bled, but she waved off Ethan's concern. "We go," she said, pointing to a crevice at the cave's rear. They crawled through, emerging on a moonlit slope, the storm dying to a whisper. Below, Red Hollow was empty. Apache gone, soldiers scattered, the canyon's heart still. Nashona led them to a hidden spring, its water cold as mercy. They drank, silent, knowing dawn would bring new hunters. She turned to Ethan, her face half lit by starlight. "I leave now, alone. My curse stays with me." Ethan grabbed her arm, chains biting. "You'll die out there." Her eyes softened, but her voice was steel. "I live free. You gave me that." She carved a symbol into a rock, a curling path, a safe trail for her people. "Find your peace, Cole." She vanished into the dark, her chains a fading echo. Ethan staggered back to Dry Fork, a ghost town now, its mind dead, railroad rerouted. Years later, in 1883, he built a haven for outcasts, orphans, widows, broken miners, on its ashes. One dawn, he found her symbol on his door. No note, just proof she lived. The desert kept its secrets, but Ethan knew. In a land where justice starved, their fight was a mark that endured. What did you feel when Nashona carved her symbol and walked into the dark? Was Ethan's fight for her worth the cost? Drop your thoughts below. Your voice keeps these tales alive. I'm grateful for every moment you spent riding through Dry Fork's dust with us, sharing this journey across a brutal, beautiful West. We'll meet again under these starry skies, where new stories wait. If you're hungry for more tales of courage and secrets, let me know what you'd love to hear next. Stay tuned and keep the fire burning.